Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us early today. Today's session 6 on Find the Link Parenting. Today we'll be discussing missed parenting. You still have time to invite people to join this session. It's going to be amazing. And I have with me our guest speaker, Dr. Sola Oluwanuga. I'm going to, Dr. Sola Ephraim Oluwanuga. I'm going to introduce her shortly, just before she speaks, but I'll just go to my slide presentation right now, just to give an overview for those who might be joining us for the first time. Okay, I'm hoping we can all see my screen. So it's Find the Link Parenting. We're here to empower parents, raise change makers. It's session 6. We've had amazing sessions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And today we are talking about missed parenting, dealing with loss. It's quite an interesting topic, rather sensitive in some way, and I think we'll be getting a lot of learning and insights from this session. Okay, the aims are to enlighten, empower, inspire, and give. That's the aim of Find the Link series. This series is on parenting. We've had a series on relationships last year, and that is all on the YouTube channel. You can check that out. So missed parenting is actually referring to the loss of an opportunity to parent a child. It could be real or perceived, meaning that a parent can feel that they've lost a child, even though every other person thinks they still have a child. And we'll probably go into the nitty-gritty of that in this session. There could also be different types. There could be a physical loss, which could be death or miscarriage. Or other kinds of physical loss, which we might get into in a bit.
Yes.
It could be emotional or psychological loss. Please, can we mute ourselves, please? Thank you. There could be emotional or psychological loss. There could be a spiritual loss. So I'm referring to a spiritual loss in which there's someone that has sold themselves out to do the wrong thing, like sold themselves out to be evil. We hope we don't have children that are lost in such a way, and that's part of why we're talking about parenting, intentional parenting as well, which has been one of the sessions we've done in the past. There could be a loss due to personal tragedy or choices that have been made. So parents may be unable to parent their children because they're very far away, or they've been excluded from the child's life and so have lost the opportunity, and some might have actually physically lost their children. And there's a proverb in Yoruba land where they say a child that is lost to death is better than a child that has just been lost in the community and there's no idea where the child is, because in that case there's no form of closure for those parents and it's very difficult for them. So the speakers are myself and Dr. Sola Ephraim Oluwanuga, who I'll be introducing shortly before she speaks. And there we are. We have some sessions coming on Find the Link Parenting. Just after this session, we have 12 in all. So the next ones coming are parenting and physical health. We're going to have at least 4 speakers, including a surgeon, pediatrician, and a dentist. We're also going to have parenting and mental health, parents with special children, parenting with challenges, and more. I'm sorry about the noise. I think there's an ice cream van in the streets. Please join us. There's an active online group on WhatsApp. I'm hoping that you have a link that will be pasted on the chat box. If you fill the form, you can join the group, and we're having a lot of healthy discussion on there. We have weekly prayers on there as well. The aim there is learning and sharing, and we love feedback so that we can make the sessions better. Please fill that at the end of the meeting. Thank you. Replays are on YouTube. Talk by Praisingchild. Feel free to follow me on any of the handles, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and the Facebook page. Or please send an email to my Gmail if you have a specific concern. Our motto on the series is, I and the children God has given me, we are for signs and wonders. And we say that in every meeting. And I will just stop sharing now. Okay. So I'll be talking about missed parenting. I think you might have seen the slides in which I've talked about missed parenting, in which it could be a physical loss. And that's the aspect that I'll be talking about myself. Okay, so as I mentioned, some people have had like a physical loss of a child, and it could be due to a death, due to a miscarriage, or due to a voluntary termination for some people. And I did mention about emotional or psychological loss, like a child that is lost to drugs, or there's some lack of understanding between them, and so there's the loss of that opportunity with that child. And I think I've mentioned about the other ones, about lost children. So I'll just be briefly talking about my story, and my story is about the physical part, but of course the physical loss also entails an emotional aspect and a mental aspect as well. So my story is that I work in the UK. I'm a doctor, for those that don't know me. I work in a GP practice, I've been in training. And at this particular season, I wasn't working in the world of general practice, which is a bit more laid back in training compared to other forms of training. So I was in a training that was more involved with critical care. And at that time, it was towards the end of the year, I was bleeding and I thought it was a period, so I didn't take much notice of it until sometime about 2 weeks after. I was on the steps at home and I was having a dizzy spell, and my heart was racing and I was breathing fast. And by this time it had been 2 weeks. And then I began to think, okay, Temi, you are a doctor. You have been bleeding for 2 weeks and this is not normal for you. This is a time you should be doing something about it because it's obviously affecting you now, all of this loss. So I tried to call up my doctor and they said they didn't have an appointment till the next 4 weeks, and that I should try the urgent care center, which I did. So going there, they said I should do a urine test. I did it, and then the person came back smiling and said, "Oh, madam, you are pregnant." And I said, okay. Now, I was married, so it was not completely unexpected. Married and not on contraception. So, but the episode was bittersweet because, okay, yes, this has happened, how nice, but this bleeding is happening at the same time. So it's obviously not supposed to be like that. And he wanted to send me to the gynecologist who saw me, did some blood tests and all of that. Long story short, the bleeding didn't stop. I was by myself at the time. They did offer me to come on admission. I said no because there was nobody with me at the time and I wanted to go home. So I went home, and fast forward, it was 6 weeks of this bleeding. And I can actually say that I felt like a woman with the issue of blood because, you know, there was this anxiety anytime you sat down that there was going to be blood on a chair. It was very uncomfortable. I didn't want to go out because accidents could happen. I was going through 2 packs of pads every day. It was just very, very difficult and tiring at that time. And that was with the pain and everything. So it was a bit of a difficult time. And of course, with each day that the bleeding continued, it was obvious to me that it's not likely that this pregnancy is going to be viable. Now, because I work in the medical line, I do understand that it is said that if a pregnancy is lost within the first 3 months, it's probably nature's way of trying to figure out that whether this is a pregnancy that would last or not. That's in layman's terms. basically. But it does not change the fact that when you are in that situation, then you have all the emotions going through that this is not turning out right, and this is really a sad situation in that sense. And so it was quite difficult. But by the time I came back and there were repeat blood tests, the levels of the hormones in the blood that they were checking had dropped significantly. And they were then saying that if the bleeding continued, I needed to come in and have an evacuation done. Now, that for me was another very difficult hurdle. And I must say that I prayed specifically about this, that God should just let the bleeding stop and let everything end without me having to go through the evacuation. And that was because I was working in the theaters at the time. So I just felt that, oh, I'm going to be here. All my colleagues are going to be here with me. This is going to be, it was just going to be too much for me to bear. So at that time, I can say I prayed. I can say God answered my prayer, because that didn't happen. By the time they did the repeat scan, they didn't see anything. And I was relieved, actually, at that point, that I did not have to go to theater and have it manually done at the time. Now, the emotions of it was that I was upset, like most people that may lose or have lost a pregnancy. And it's unfortunate, but people do lose pregnancies. It's not uncommon. It's not completely uncommon, but it does not make it any less a sad occurrence. And there were times I was angry, and I remember thinking that, have I done something that's made this happen? And you know, where we come from, sometimes you have thoughts of, oh, did somebody hug me and this thing happened? You know, those kind of superstitious things. Not as if I was thinking that way, but you know, things happen and you begin to think, oh, could I have done things differently? And it's okay to think that way and sometimes be reflective about our jobs, whether they're very stressful, about our health, about our relationships, whether there are people in our lives that are exerting more power in our lives than they should, or that we've given too much power over us, and then we're not able to live our lives as we need to. So it was a time for reflection. There was a time I was angry. I remember talking to my husband at the time and saying, you don't understand. You've not told me sorry. This is something serious. I'm going through a hard time. You should tell me sorry. Something serious has happened. I've lost something. Don't act as though nothing has happened. And I remember having that conversation and being a bit upset about it. And that brings me to the stages of grief, which are denial, in which you think, oh, this is not happening. This cannot be happening. And then there's some anger, which you're angry that, why is this happening to me? Or you're angry at yourself, angry at God, angry at other people. There are times when you're bargaining. That's one of the other stages, when you're saying, oh, maybe if I do this, this will happen. If I do that, this will happen. Maybe if we try this, this will happen. And sometimes you're holding on to things that are lost, and there might be a time that you need to let go. Sometimes it does make us very low, depressed, and depression is one of the stages of grief. And sometimes, with the help of God, we come to a place of acceptance and we are able to hope again. And I think I just want to end this on the note that we should allow ourselves to grieve if we're going through a sad phase like this, like losing a child or a miscarriage. Allow yourself to grieve, but at some point you would need to make a choice that you don't want it to go on, and you would want to hope again and be happy without having to dwell on the occurrence. So give yourself an opportunity to live, to be happy, to be healthy. Forgive those who might not understand, because some people might not understand, not unless you explain it in terms that they understand or in language that they understand. Some people do not understand. Sometimes there are reminders that we realize that we thought we've gotten over something, and then we realize that we're still hurting somewhere. I remember when we were having the series on relationships and health, I think it was the last session actually on relationships, and the lady that was talking about women's health, the gynecologist, she was talking about pregnancies and miscarriages, and she was making some very deep comments. That particular video is not yet on the YouTube channel yet. But as she was talking, I was listening in the background, and I could see myself tearing up. And, you know, sometimes things like that might happen and you begin to think, oh, I thought I was over this. But sometimes they're reminders that things have happened in the past and that we are human and that we still feel. And it's not completely wrong because we are not. It just means that we need to realize what's going on. We are not supposed to be numb to our pain. We have it for a reason. And sometimes it makes us empathetic. It makes us compassionate. It makes us deep thinkers. Now, staying grounded is very important. People have different things that ground them. I must have said in previous sessions, the things that ground me are my faith in God. I have a supportive family and friends in my circle. But healing comes from God. So friends and family can support you. They're important. Counselors can support you. But true healing comes from God. And He is a source that will never run dry. And for those that are hoping, there is hope for tomorrow. I'm happy that I can say that by the grace of God, I have seen good days and I am hopeful about better days to come. And so there's hope for tomorrow, especially if you know the one who holds tomorrow. And that is my session done. Thank you for listening. So I would just move on to Dr. Sola Oluwanuga, who is going to be handling the next session. Welcome, Auntie Shola. This is the real Auntie Shola. Some other people think they are Auntie Shola because they are 2 years older than me. They know themselves. Therefore, let me not say who they are. So Doctor, I'll just introduce her briefly. If we have any questions from anything that has been said, or we have any comments, please feel free to put it in the chat box. Thank you so much. Dr. Sola Ephraim Oluwanuga is going to be doing justice to the topic now and expounding on it in great detail. This is her brief introduction. She is a psychiatrist and a certified addiction professional. She's a senior lecturer in psychiatry at the College of Health Sciences, the University of Abuja, and she's a chief consultant psychiatrist at the National Hospital, Abuja. She also happened to teach me in preclinical school, physiology, and in clinical school, psychiatry. She's a fantastic lady. She lives with her family in the beautiful capital city of Abuja, center of power. She has a master's in science, Master of Science in Physiology and a master's in mental health policy and services from Lisbon. She had double degrees in physiology and medicine. And that's why I said she taught me in both sides of medical school. She has served as a United Nations counselor and a affiliated counselor within the United Nations Secretariat. She's currently involved in the national effort for rehabilitation of victims of insurgency. She is presently a trainer for the Universal Treatment Curriculum for Substance Use Disorder under the United States government and USAID in Nigeria. She has published papers and book chapters in her research areas of stigma, old age psychiatry, substance abuse, and pain, and self-management. So join me to welcome Dr. Sola Oluwanuga. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Temitope. You promised me you were going to do a short version of that introduction.
That is the short version.
Thank you, everybody, and I'm happy to be here. I'm sorry I haven't been able to join all of the series. I joined a couple and I enjoyed them tremendously. And when Temitope said I should speak about misparenthood, I had to say, Temitope, what exactly do you have in mind? You know, and then she shared what she had in mind. Okay. And yeah, so the story started from Temitope sharing her her story of miscarriage. And, that's a very touching story. Temitope, well done for being strong. And I'm saying, and I saw it, somebody at least on the chat said, this is making me cry. I remembered my lost pregnancy. Many women can remember pregnancies that they've lost. I don't want to talk about mine. I went through it twice, but that would take a long story. So if I say I can empathize with people who have gone through this, believe me, I can, and but we thank God in all things. Some of these things happen to us so that we can comfort others with the comfort with which we have been comforted. There are some of us who would never have a certain level of empathy had we not gone through the things that we had gone through. So count it all joy when you go through diverse tribulations, because you will still use your story to comfort someone in the future. So I'm taking off where Temitope started, when she talked about miscarriage. Miscarriage and losing a young child. Losing any child at all to death can be very, very painful, whether the child is still in the womb or the child is alive. And yes, we go through the stages of grief, which we need to resolve. Sometimes people get stuck in one stage or the other of that grief. Beginning from the very first stage, somebody could be stuck in denial. So they're telling the person that this pregnancy is lost, and the person is saying, no, it's not. Months later, no, it's not. Even when every scientific evidence, every scan, every test has shown there's no pregnancy there again, the person keeps saying, no, it's not. Now, when that goes on for too long, we begin to regard it as an abnormal grief reaction. When anybody is stuck in any stage, any of the stages of grief for too long, it could begin to count for an abnormal grief reaction. And the thing about the stages of grief is that people don't necessarily go through them in any particular order or within any particular time frame. So you could find that today somebody is feeling in denial, and then the person moves straight away from there to anger, to grief, to resolution, back to denial, all within a day, sometimes less than a day. And then the person could stay in certain phases for a period and move on. And when you think, oh, I've gotten over that, you go back to it again. So it's a very traumatic experience. And so it's important at that time to put your trust in God, who is the God of all comfort, as the Bible tells us in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3-5. There are times when we have to trust in the Lord to lift up our heart. And even speaking as a psychiatrist, you know that one of the things that has been proven to help people get along mentally is belief in a superior being. As there are some of us who call our God Jehovah, and we believe in Jesus Christ. There are so many others who don't do that of all the people all over the world. But knowing that you have a God that you relate to, no matter by what name you call him, has been shown scientifically to help one to get over emotional challenges, because you then don't feel that you are responsible for everything. That crushing guilt that sometimes comes when you think that this might be your fault one way or the other, or this is something that you deserve to have visited upon you. The feeling is better when you know that there is a God in charge of the affairs of men. And it's also a time when one is going through loss and grief to remember the other good things that are going on in your life. You know, there's nobody who can say, oh, there's nothing good going on in my life. Nothing at all is good. No. The only thing is that sometimes life looks like a blank page, a very pure white blank page. And then there's a spot of black on it. And when you ask anybody, what can you see? They're not going to tell you, I can see a sea of white paper. They'll say, I can see a black spot. So when we have difficulties in life, they look like that black spot. We cannot see every other good thing that is around us, but it's important that we do. And it's important to also place our challenges in the context of our entire lives. That helps us to have hope. When you think that, yes, this is sad, this is, disheartening, it happened to me. But think about this fact that you are the same person that good things had happened to in the past, and look forward to the fact that good times are going to come back, happy days are going to come back again, And also, when one loses a child to death, remember that all good things come from God. And when you are given a gift, accept what you're given. Sometimes it's a gift just to ever have been pregnant. Sometimes it's a gift just to have had a child, even if for a short time. I know it's very hard to think, yes, how can you say I should have had a child for just a short time? What about those that have their children until they die and their children bury them? Nobody prays to have a child and lose a child after a short time, but it happens. I didn't have a child until the 20th year of my marriage, finally. But all the time I didn't have a child, the one thing that kept me going, I used to say, I know that when I die, my corpse will not be abandoned. I will have people who will bury me, And I used to also tell myself that when I get to heaven, I know that the question I will be asked is your name in the book of life, not what is the name of your child. So those two things kept me going, even as I had faith. But I knew that wasn't the end all and be all of life. The fact that somebody died and children buried them doesn't mean they've had the most successful life on earth. Actually, a successful life is a life that ends in heaven, a life that ends with impact, that people will know you've touched lives. And whenever people think about you, they can think about you as imparting a sweet scent into their life. That is the true success. True success is not necessarily counted by what we own or what we have or who we are. And when we look at life in that bigger picture, it will help us to, look at some of these things and say, yes, this is extremely sad, but it's not the end of my life. It's not the only purpose of my life. My husband used to say, I didn't get married to you just to have children. So don't worry. When I was at my lowest point, he would say that, and it used to help me to keep going. So now, let's talk about some other challenging circumstances. One particularly traumatic one is when a child goes missing. A missing child is a very traumatic experience to go through. As Temitope mentioned, there's no closure. And that lack of closure keeps everything suspended. And the person goes through a series of emotions: hope, despair, get all sorts of feelings, and they don't go away because of the fact that the matter is not resolved. That's probably why, as a matter of fact, legally, in the common law system, which the UK and Nigeria use, 7 years after a person is lost, they are declared as dead. Legally, they're declared as dead, so that hopefully people can seize on that time frame and say, well, you know, it's been more than 7 years without a trace of this person, no trace at all. Nobody said they saw the person anywhere, or no information from the person at all for 7 complete years. Then the person can legally be as presumed to be dead. It doesn't make it any less painful. And again, at that time, it might be advisable to seek professional help because of the prolonged nature of the pain and because of the lack of closure, which does not allow one to settle on any particular side of the fence. Some people get by getting counseling, maybe from their church or any spiritual groups they belong to, or people who can comfort them. But if it is noticed that one is in a state of grief that remains unending, it is important to get help. And you know, we have one that we're all going through as a nation in Nigeria now. The girls from Chibok have been lost now for almost 7 years. Soon now, after 7 years, it is possible that the law might say, well, you have to close the books. Again, that's a very abnormal one, because we know that such children are not all likely to be dead. They're somewhere on the surface of this earth. They're just separated from their loved ones. That's very, very, very traumatic. What can the parents do? They cannot blame themselves for sending their daughters to school. That's the best decision a parent could take for their own child, you know. And they cannot blame themselves that some of the children were found and theirs were not found. There was nothing that they could do. There was no particular thing that determined the choice of which one of those children were returned, you know. So again, we find that there are some of these things that happen that cannot even fit into any particular category. If it was an individual, you could say, oh, declare legally dead. We're talking about over 100 children. They weren't set before a firing squad. So definitely some of them will still be alive after 7 years. We pray they are found. We continue to pray. We must never, never lose hope. So let's spare a thought too for people like that. Now, I also want to talk about the fact that, you know, loss is always a tragedy at different levels. It's a tragedy for the parent, but it's also a tragedy for the entire family and their associates, their different communities, maybe the school or, you know, societies to which that child belonged. And the parents still have to interact with those people. Sometimes they want to move on, and they may be slowed down from moving on because of what others are coming to tell them or expect them to do. Even when there are two parents, they don't always go at the same level. And sometimes the loss of a child, it could cause a rift. If it's not carefully handled, it could cause a rift. Because if one particular partner believes that, maybe, just has different beliefs from the other person. Oh, I think it might just be your mom because I went to pray somewhere and they told me. Or I think that, if you had allowed us to take that child to hospital 2 days earlier, or if you had paid for that, or different things, and then they hold on to it, it could become sometimes even a source of, separation when two people, both parents have different ideas about the loss of that child, how it came about, and how they should handle it. So it's not something to be taken lightly. So it's not just a personal tragedy, it's something that could cause a ripple effect, for which people should seek counsel. Please never underestimate the benefit of seeking counsel. It doesn't have to be professional. Even non-professional counsel is from somebody who knows is better than no counsel at all. Of course, sometimes non-professional counsel can be counterproductive, but even the opportunity to talk about loss, to ventilate about it is healing, no matter what one hears from the other side. Now, I'm going to try to talk about, I will just talk about spiritual loss before I go on to talk about a particular type of loss that I would just like to dwell on. But let's address spiritual loss. When parents have a child and the child is lost to them emotionally, lost to them spiritually, you have a child and the child says, I'm going to join Hare Krishna. Or in fact, I have joined. Oh my goodness. The parents are elders in the church. How did this person go to join a religion that is so far away from ours? That is something that can also be very devastating to parents. But it's very important at that time to recognize that individuals have their personal choices to make. When you're bringing up your child, inculcate your values in your child and leave it there. You can't do more than that. You cannot hold yourself responsible or hold yourself to blame because of the fact that a child has left your faith. But it's also important to know that everything happens for a purpose, and never lose hope. A child that is lost today may be found tomorrow spiritually. Don't give up. Never give up. Never stop praying. Never stop showing love. Love is a very powerful tool to win back your child. Not criticism, not nagging or wailing or blaming. Just show love. Show love. Continue to pray and uphold the child and continue to make your own values clear. Continue to make your own values clear. So this brings me to the part I want to talk about. What about if a person loses their child to a bad habit, like substance abuse, such that because of the fact that that child went into substance abuse, the child lost relationship with the parents, they lose the opportunity to parent that child. This is something that usually tends to start in adolescence, while the parents still feel that they are in active parenthood. And then this child moves away from them, becomes closer to the people with whom he shares drugs, from the people from whom he buys drugs. And then the parents lose the opportunity to parent that child. That's another example of lost parenthood. And that is one where we should be proactive. We should do our best to intervene. It's important to get the person help. There is help for those who use drugs and alcohol. And we should look for help, professional help, to get them out of that substance use disorder, whilst all the time showing them love, showing them support, whether they want to be related to you or not. Any opportunity you can find, reach them. Feel free to intervene. Feel free to intervene. If you know where this person is, go and get the person to go to the hospital. Sometimes some parents have had to use even law enforcement to reach their own children. Because if you have to save by fire, save by fire. You know, just save. Get the child help. Get the child help with that addiction problem. It's very important. And when a person is going through an addiction problem, critical comments don't help. Critical comments don't help. It's better to try to, you know, show understanding and let them be their own critic by doing what we call motivational interviewing. You talk to the person instead of saying, just asking directly, why did you do that? Why do you use drugs? Why do you can ask the person, tell me about the things that you've been experiencing. Tell me about tell me about what your life is at this time. Just let the person feel free to talk without criticizing, and then ask the person, where do you think your life could be going? Do you think you could get help? Do you think this is having, do you think this might be taking a toll on your health? The questions like that might make the person begin to think and begin to say, okay, you know, maybe this thing is not good for me, it's not good for my health. Rather than, hey, you know the son of whom you are, there's nobody from this family that has ever done drugs before. It's just a disgrace and we don't want to know you. And you're just, everybody now knows that our son is into this. No, those things don't really help. This person is probably already guilty when they are not on drugs. And by the way, there are some people who just go back to take drugs because when they're off drugs, the guilt, they can't live with the guilt. So, look, I can't live with this guilt. Let me just trip off again. So they go and get something and set themselves off on another trip. So we don't want to make them feel too guilty so that the guilt doesn't set them on a round trip again. So let's try our best. If you can't handle it, look for somebody who can handle it. Look for someone who you think can talk to them. Is it a friend? Is it a relation? Is it some favorite aunt or uncle of theirs somewhere that they used to like and listen to? Look for somebody, but get help. I think that I will pause there so that we can have a robust discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sola. Do we have any questions from the house, from anybody regarding all that she said so far? Pin drop silence.
Okay.
Yes.
While people are thinking of their questions, there was one I thought that I might just also talk about, and that is when people lose the opportunity to parent due to access. Supposing there's a divorce, a nasty divorce, and they can't read their child, or something that is happening nowadays, immigration. Somebody goes, one parent goes, takes the child to America, and then they don't give the other parent a visa. So that child they are not able to see the child, which is partial loss, but sometimes it's total. Some people go through nasty divorces. Somebody goes off with the child, they're denied access to the child, they don't. And so the thing with parenting is that it's a time limited thing. Although our parents, our mommy and daddy, Prof and Mr. Yedu, they're here, so they know that parenting never ends. Even when your child is, as long as you're alive, you're still the parent, no matter how old the child is. But that part of parenting where you have the chance to input your values, mold the child, and so on, it has a time frame. So supposing a child is taken away completely during that period, the next time you meet the child is an adult. The child doesn't have your values. The child doesn't have that emotional connectedness to the parent because that parent didn't have the chance. Oh, the parents were divorced when the child was 2, or parents never were married. Mother had the child and took the child off to another father, but the real father and somewhere never met this child and then was meeting the child for the first time at 30. These things are real life and they need to be handled carefully. When you're meeting an adult child that you've never met before, or you've lost the opportunity to parent, you have to realize that your parenting is going to have to come in this time, not that active parenting. You just want a relationship, a cordial relationship with the child, a loving relationship, just to show the child, I love you, I care about you, I'm there for you. But you cannot bring yourself into that person's life and start trying to organize their lives for them, because it could bring about resentment and it could bring about rejection of your attempt at parenting, which would then be like, double jeopardy. Is bad enough, I couldn't parent this child. Now I found this child, the child doesn't want me for the second time. So we have to be careful to handle these situations with wisdom and, with tact, and tread carefully. So let me pause again and see whether questions have now arisen. And please, you can feel free to ask questions on behalf of other people I know that it's possible, maybe there's nobody here that has gone through this, but sometimes these discussions are useful too, so that people we know who are going through things like this, we might just pick up 1 or 2 things to help them.
Thank you very much, Ma. Very, very insightful. Somebody said it is a niche topic. Well, I'm sure we might have some questions from the session.
I have a question. No.
Okay, who's speaking to us?
My name is Bashira too.
Okay, Bashirat, you can speak. Yes.
Oh, thank you, the 2 speakers. Thank you, Dr. Sola. Your voice is like speaking, and I was just swimming inside your voice. And thank you for the Femi. It's really heartbroken what you shared, and just like you said, we think that we have healed, but when we revisit the issue again, you know that you are not totally healed. I don't know if there's something there's a word called total heal. I don't know. Please, if there's a word there. My question is still back to Dr. Sola. She said something about motivational correction. How do you do motivational correction in a child that is lost with I think you said substance abuse? Because especially with the parenting in a country whereby it's different from where we are parented, because it's very difficult. We Nigerian women, my Nigerian mother, we are like this to shouting. before you now remember that, oh, they said in our parenting class that we should stop shouting. You could have shouted once, before I could now pinch myself again. And okay, but miss, drug, use of drug, it will be difficult, man, to use that motivational one. Please help us to emphasize on that, so that I'm not thinking about it, but I have a Zimbabwe friend that she has lost 2 of her sons because she went into her career, and before she knows it, her sons went into gang. And now she has lost her career being a social service. She has to leave the job because her kids are now under social service. She's calling me, but honestly, I don't know what to say sometimes. I was just like, just call me to cry. I don't know what to say. So I think if I gain that skills from you now, I can use it for her. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Are we to listen to all the questions or take them one by one?
We can take them as they come up.
Okay, thank you. Because I can see a question in the chat room.
Yes.
Somebody has a question. I will address your question. Thank you.
Yes.
iPhone. So, you wanted to know how we can handle children who go into substance abuse or go into gangs, especially in a country like, the Western countries where there are very strict rules about how to handle your children. First of all, let me start by saying, and I mean this, that it has not been proven that beating children, it has not been shown that beating children is something that, just give me a second.
Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. If you still have a question, please feel free to put.
Sorry, I'm right back.
Okay.
Yes, I need it. So, so the question was about, children. How do you? So I was saying that there's been no scientific proof that children turn out better whether you cane them or whether you don't. Because this thing about you shouldn't cane children, it came about from when people overdid the caning. And then people started to see battered children in the emergency rooms and in hospitals. So government had to do something. Since we cannot tell you, even if you said, give 1 stroke of the cane, what if it was that single stroke of the cane that went into the child's eye and blinded the child, So they said, no caning, you don't do that to your children. That's where these things come from. And the important thing is that we need to know that, it's not until I can shout at my child. As a matter of fact, shouting has not been proven to help either. Somebody said that when you shout, check yourself. Maybe you are losing control of the situation. So we all find it happening to us. As a parent, sometimes I shout too, because of course in our culture here, it's just very, very appropriate to shout sometimes, or don't let me say appropriate, acceptable. But it's important to recognize that shouting sometimes just shows emotional distance. If a child is being shouted at, the child may just hear only the shouting and not the rebuke behind the shouting. So let's think about that sometimes. If I talk about this thing calmly and let this child know this is a no, this is totally unacceptable to me, will the child be more likely to listen? Or will the child be more likely to listen when I'm saying it with a very loud and angry voice? particularly children that are very little. Sometimes that loud and angry voice just intimidates them. That's why you find little children, they burst into tears sometimes if they feel that the emotional energy being put into the rebuke is overwhelming. And the fact that they are crying doesn't mean they are crying about what they did. They could simply be crying about the way they feel that they're being treated. So having said that, again, we have to be very, very careful with teenagers. Adolescents is always a slippery slope. But my attitude is that I always advise parents, give your child your values, let them know and leave it there. And you take the rest to God. Pray for them and show them support. You see, let your child know that I can't, regarding this substance use, I am totally in disagreement with you. I'm totally opposed to that. But let the same child know that you love them. You don't like that habit. You don't like what they are doing, but you love them. In fact, it's precisely because you love them and you know the dangers of these habits that you are reacting the way you are reacting. It's a sad story about children of a social worker having to go and join gangs. It happens. Unfortunately, it does happen more frequently than we think. Not necessarily, I mean, I'm thinking now of preachers' children. Sometimes preachers' children go wayward because
Please unmute yourself, ma. Sorry.
yeah, am I back?
Yes, ma, you're back.
So.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I was talking about that preachers' children syndrome. Sometimes it occurs when preachers' children, are the worst behaved, it looks. Usually maybe because of familiarity. They're familiar with the terrain. We've heard it all before. Oh, look at Daddy, I just heard him preach this, but I saw him do that yesterday, as if their dad has to be an angel. Yeah, sometimes you do preach what you may not practice all the time. And that makes, the children begin to feel, well, maybe there's nothing authentic here. Sometimes too, there's this familiarity with the gospel. From the day they've been born, they don't remember any time when they never went to church. And so, Chemtoka will know this, that the fact that you are in an environment for a while, something like smell. Now, if you go into an environment and it has a very nice smell, after some time, you don't notice it anymore, whether a nice smell or a bad smell. So children sometimes come to church and then after a while, they're just environmental Christians. This thing is not in their heart. Yeah, it's not in their heart. And they become, even the environment doesn't excite them anymore, because that's not the way faith is supposed to be anyway. It's not supposed to be an environmental thing. It's supposed to be a heart thing. So if a person's religious activities are not from the heart, but from the environment, you'll find that it may not last, it may not work, it may not carry them through, particularly carry them through the periods of life when they have doubts and they have challenges. So it's always important to check in with your children whether the things you believe are actually being believed in their heart, or they're just playing along with you. I had a recent experience when somebody who was very close to me came and told me that her 17-year-old daughter said, I don't really believe in all these born again people. And this was a girl that was a member of the choir. This was a girl that all her life has been on stage, children's choir, presentation, this and that, Bible recitation. And I says, I don't believe in it. What is it about anyway? You know, I'm sorry, is it okay if I don't pray anymore? Because the child felt, you know, I think I'm old enough to say this to you now. So these things happen. And the best way is, number one, look at yourself. What role do you have to play in it? Don't dwell too much on that. You can't change the past. Look at the future. What can you change? What are the practical things? If you cannot do it by yourself, who do you think can help? Ask the child, what do you think I can do? How do you think I can reach you? Sometimes you have to ask the child, how do you think I can reach you? What do you think will persuade you to drop this habit? Sometimes they might say, well, you know, and other times they might not be forthcoming, but don't fail to try, and don't fail to get help. At the end of the day, it's always good to get help. We can't do all these things by ourselves. That's why we're community. That's why we're family. That's why there are professionals to help. So get help. Should I go on to the second question? I saw a question.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Before that second question, I have a question. I'm not sure whether it's more related to this one than the next one. And it's about a child that is already into substance abuse and lacks insight. Where do you start from? I know that's a bit of a... I'm throwing you a tough ball, but I think you will know the answer to that. But yeah, the child lacks insight. Where are we starting the discussion from?
Yeah, actually, that lack of insight is very, very common with people who go into substance abuse. You even hear sentences like, yes, I know I smoke cannabis, but I know the quantity that I can cope with. Yeah, I hear things like that, you know. I know the quantity I can cope with. So once I don't go beyond that, I'm cool, you know. So we have to help them acquire insight. Normally, that is best done by a professional, because professionals are trained to help the person acquire insight. But let me say here straight away that even in the professional world, when we want to help them acquire insight, it's not just one meeting, sitting down and just having the discussion. You have to prepare the person for the change. You have to help the person want the change. The person might just say, I don't want to talk about it. I'm all right. You can just say, really, why do you say you're all right? Why do you say you're all right? And so you might hear something that the person might say. I hear one of the commonest things I hear people tell me is that when I use hemp, I'm more creative. And I always say to them, yeah, I know a number of creative people who have used hemp, like Fela, like Bob Marley. But have you noticed that they didn't live long? They had cancer of the larynx, you know. They had throat cancer. Then they begin to think about that. And then you begin to say, has it occurred to you that sometimes people start by, yes, it is true. Sometimes you have to acknowledge, because you see, the truth is that these drugs make people feel good. So you cannot reach them by trying to say, drugs are useless, this and that. Yeah, I said, yeah, I concede. It helps people get over emotional pain. Oh yeah, I concede. Some people even say it has a therapeutic uses now. I know, like we use it when people have end-stage cancer. Do you have that? You know, so, you know, and you begin to talk to them, but let them know, okay, you know, I know that this thing helps you to sleep. But do you know that if you continue to take, but you know that it also suppresses your breathing? And you know that the dose that is helping you to sleep now will not, in fact, be effective in helping you to sleep anymore after a while. And if you keep increasing and increasing, you might then go overboard to the dose that will knock off your breathing. And that overdose could kill you. People have died like that. Just let them see the danger, but you really hardly make progress when you are confrontational, when you are condemning. Love always wins over. Understanding always wins the day. So maybe I can go on now to the next question, because I don't know how long we have.
Yes.
So somebody wanted to know that if your child comes out openly gay, how can you balance being supportive and letting your child know your values? Now, this is something that is more or less so, we have to be careful in approaching this now, because there are parts of the world where it's perfectly legal to be gay, and there are parts of the world, like in the UK, most of the Western world it is, but in some African countries, including Nigeria, is not, for which, in fact, as a country, we're even facing sanctions. How dare you place sanctions against people who are gay? Therefore, as a country, we will not recognize you. Nigeria is going through that. Some countries like Uganda are going through that. So it's important within that context to always remember the boundaries of the law, lest even the person that is your own child goes to report you and says, please, this person is talking to me in a way that I feel is hate speech, or they are showing discrimination against me one way or the other. Other children have been given this in the family, and I'm not being given this and that. So we have to be mindful of what the law says. Having said that, we all have our values. We all have our values, and it's important to let our children know our values. It's important to let them know what the Bible says about their bodies. Now, there are various interpretations, because there are there are churches now, many churches now. In fact, it looks like in the Western world, churches are obliged to accept them and, even get them married, etc., etc. But there is very little, I have to be factual, that you can do when your child comes out gay and it's not something that you want in your mind. There's little you can do beyond letting your child know your values and praying for that child. Praying for that child. Beyond that, you might actually be on shaky ground legally. So that's what I say for that. And I want this to be interactive. I know that we have many people on this forum who might have something to say. Temitope, you might just see whether people want to chip in something.
Okay, we have a story from someone on here that is interesting, about someone that Mr. Olu, that advised a family to allow them to allow their 23-year-old leave the house because it was terrorizing the family, because the mother remarried after almost 15 years, refused to go to college, spent his earnings on frivolous things, very aggressive, out of control, wanted to beat up his stepfather. It took a while for the family to make up their minds. And now he's living alone, appears to have realized and calmed down. He has now gone back to college because the youngest is going to uni and all his friends are graduates and have masters. And so the person ends with, sometimes we have to give tough love to bring them back on track, which I completely agree with.
And I absolutely agree with that. This is a very interesting one, because just yesterday I was counseling a young lady who was very angry because her father came to visit her with a lady. Now, her mother passed on a couple of years ago, and she's an undergraduate. So the father went to see her and took a lady, and she was very angry that he came with a lady, this and that. So I said to her, I apologize that your dad should have prepared you. It wasn't right. that your dad turned up with a lady without telling you he wasn't coming to see you alone. I said, but having said that, I want to tell you that marriage is till death do us part. If people happen to stay married, until the other person died, then they have a right to remarry. And it's better to remarry than to, not be able to, supposing the person didn't remarry and the person went into drinking. Instead, because he's lonely, he's all by himself, then he goes to start drinking just to get to sleep at night. It's better to remarry. There's nothing wrong in somebody remarrying after their spouse is dead. There's nothing wrong in somebody remarrying after they've had a legal divorce. There's nothing wrong in it. I'm not one of those people that believe that a person must never marry again as long as somebody from whom they got divorced is alive. It depends on the circumstances of the divorce, and it depends on the person's conviction. Some people say, oh, that person is going to come back. Fine, but if you know, for example, the person is not going to come back, like if the person was a very physically abusive person who has now in fact gone on to be married twice and maybe is living with a third woman, if you have a chance at happiness, that is an unbeliever who has gone away. Take your chance at happiness and be happy. So when a child now begins to rebel against that, it's time to apply tough love. Let the child know, no, your life is your life, my life is my life. I'm entitled to be happy in spite of being a parent, because unfortunately some parents tie their happiness in their lives to their children. It's a very wrong attitude. Your child is your child, and your child will never be with you forever. That is living with you under the same roof, everything. That's not a good way to raise your child. So let your child grow up and grow out of the nest, and you have a life. You have a life. I'm about to try to look at the chat because I can see we had
no questions yet, just chit chat. Well, yes, that was a really great point about not tying your happiness to a child, because just the same way people tie their happiness to a child, they take the blame for the child when a child is supposed to already be like responsible enough to take their own decisions and face the consequences thereof. Of course, as you mentioned, parenting never really ends, and it's painful when a child goes the wrong way or ends up in trouble, because everybody feels it. Even the parents that they've left or the parents that are far away would still feel that pain with the child because they are involved with the child. Yeah. But yeah, what you've mentioned about motivational interviewing, very important. How do you think I can reach you? What can persuade you to drop this habit? I think that's really great. If they would respond, because they might then say things that you cannot deliver on.
Yeah, and let me say this: when it comes to substance abuse, you can have the same conversation over and over again in different ways before it works. Don't give up. The other thing is the same conversation to which they didn't respond to a particular person, they might respond when someone else is talking to them. And let me give another example. I had a patient recently who actually stopped using drugs. But when this young lady stopped using drugs, they were over-policing her. You're not allowed to go out. You cannot call any of your friends. None of your friends can visit, this and that. So you know what she said? She did. She went back to drugs because she said, I don't have a life anymore. I'm not allowed to do anything. I'm not allowed to even own a smartphone. I'm not allowed to connect with my friends on social media. I'm not allowed to visit my friends. They are not allowed to visit me. I'm depressed, she said. And because of that, she found a way to get drugs back. So they are saying, can you imagine? And she had stopped this and that. I had to say, well, nature abhors a vacuum. Somebody cannot stop drugs and you don't fill it up with other things. If even before they completely stop, once they start reducing and they show interest in stopping, load them with other interesting activities. You say these friends are bad. Quickly find good people to befriend them, good groups to which they can belong. Become their friend yourself and find responsible people who can be their friend. A person cannot be without a friend. You cannot say you can't have any friends. None of your friends can come to this house. Neither can you go out to visit your child. That kind of extreme attitude never works. So we need to know how to, take the right decisions and walk the middle of the road rather than, go extreme in any particular direction.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anshala. What you've mentioned about friends, it reminds me of someone I spoke to who was very concerned about a daughter who had been self-harming. And she said all her friends have gender issues. This is someone in secondary school. Her mother was very concerned. The child was an only child in this climate and not African. So she was very worried and said, if you see the kind of things she watches, very dark things, I know her friends are not really good for her, but I don't want her not to have friends because then she might be lonely and all of that. And I was encouraging her that it's a good thing that you've sought help. But at the stage that this child is, like 13 or 14, I said, you would really need to put down your feet about her friendships, because
Yes.
she cannot be in the midst of people that are having all this kind of problems and she's not going to start having them as well, because those are the people she's spending most of her time with. And so I'm just trying to bring out a little point that sometimes it's good to be alone, understand yourself, love yourself, find your uniqueness and your individuality. Then you can begin to think about the kind of friends that you want to move with. But as in having that kind of strong sense of identity is very important, because some people are just looking for people to identify with because they are searching for what is lost. Meanwhile, they've not discovered who they are. And it's very difficult, I think, for young children that are just looking for role models. They're just looking for someone to follow. And what you've mentioned about showing understanding, trying to be their friend. Sorry, what did we eat? Sister Fumi, let me mute you. Okay. I think it's very difficult because people are trying to find their identity, and people from the underworld are offering them love and acceptance. That was what I was discussing with a friend of mine. I said, this is the bait that they are giving them, that come as you are, we love you, we would accept you. And then they lure them into things that are wrong. But when they are coming from strong values and right values, and then it's not attractive because there's no love, there's no acceptance, there's a lot of judgment. Those were my thoughts about it. I don't know what you want to say about that.
Yes, it's very important. And let me say this, when we're talking about parenting, and we've had other sessions before this, it's in phases. The parenting that you apply to a 5, 6-year-old is different from 16, 17-year-old. It's different from a 13-year-old. That particular 12, 13 is a very, very important part of the stage of their lives. That's when they are attaining puberty, they are looking at themselves and they are wondering whether they really feel comfortable with the way their body is turning out. Suddenly it gets, maybe I really shouldn't be a girl. I don't like the way my body is turning out, this and that. Or maybe the others are beginning to develop feminine characteristics and hers is a bit delayed, and she begins to think, maybe I wasn't even meant to be a girl in the first instance. I've always felt like a boy, So it's very, very important to help them during this period. It's the most important part of young people's lives, when parents have to pull them in. Try and find out, what do they enjoy? So your children enjoy watching movies. Watch movies with them. There are many interesting movies. You two don't just say, hey, I'm studying my Bible or this and that. And you can just go and then they'll be watching the wrong things by themselves. Have family movie nights. Watch movies so that, they will begin to, things you laugh at. It's not every time that you must teach lessons of life, with a stern face, joking. Sometimes you even hear something terrible, something that they are very likely to say, what? And then you share it with them, and they say, what? I say, it happens, and it could start this way, and they begin to wonder, and it might be something that they might have been struggling with. It starts from childhood, but it's never too late to start. Let your children feel free to tell you what they are going through. Don't, when a child wants to tell you 10 things and the child has said only one, and say, you mean you did that? The child just say, yeah, I just said 1/10 of what I did. I was about to say, we went to the party and somebody was serving cakes that had cannabis in it. And then I just said, I went to a party. And he said, you went to a disco? Because you think the child, no, this child, we've raised this child. The child doesn't go to party. She went. Listen now. So really, be patient. Hold your tongue. Then you hear it to the end. And you now hear it to the end. So, because look, things are happening now. Somebody will say, I went to visit, they cook noodles. They put cannabis inside noodles. I see people get introduced to noodles, cannabis that way. I see people get introduced to cannabis by it being put in cake. They bake cake and they served it and they were eating cake. The other day I saw it on TV too, cookies. So if they can put it in beans, in noodles, in cake and cookies, will you say your child is bad for going to visit a friend and agreeing to eat noodles? Listen to the story and then, oh my goodness. Now, how could we have prevented that? Maybe we couldn't have this and that. But now that we know this kind of thing can happen, it means one has to really, really be careful. Now, look, I know you had an experience, but you can't afford to go through that kind of experience again. Some people, they take cannabis only 2 times or once, and it makes them to lose their mind. You don't know what it can do to you. It's rare, but if they say it happens only 1%, supposing you're the 1%, a little bit of throwing the fear of God into them, but showing them that, I'm not blaming you. All I'm saying is don't let it happen again. Don't let it happen again. Okay, so the child comes out, it's happened again. You now move for yourself. It's happened again. This is the point where you really have to be stronger in insisting and start helping the child to find resources. Young people always do better when they are challenged to find the resources within them to say no. Teach your child to say no. Even say no to you. Sometimes people say, no, my child can't say no to me. If your child says no, look at what the child is saying no to. No, I don't want to wear the green socks. Don't say you must wear green socks. You are turning your child, you're turning your child into a pushover. You say, why don't you want the green socks? I thought the green socks might. No, I think I like the orange ones better. It's all right. Please, the child feels cool in the orange socks better than the green socks. Parents, go away. You are the one that thinks this is the one that matches. But you're also teaching the child to learn to say no. If your child must say, yes, I don't like this dress. No, that's the one you must wear. No, that's the socks you must wear. No, that's the song you must sing. Innocuous choices. Let your child use it to practice to say no to you, so that you know that your child has it within them to say no. If your child doesn't have that spine to say no, that's when the child will fall for what other people are offering So don't always feel of, hey, my child said no. Can you imagine? The child said she didn't like this dress. You didn't like the dress, return it to the shop, give it away. You know, don't let the child feel, I must like it because mommy likes it. No, let the child know that it's okay. There are some things that I'm allowed not to like. But and when your child knows, look, I told mommy I didn't like the dress and she changed it in the store. She didn't insist I wear. So my mom takes no from. When you now say, I do not want you to smoke, and that is not negotiable, the child knows, hey, look, mom must be serious, because I know that if it wasn't something serious, mommy normally would take no. But when she's Mrs. No anyway, has she ever said yes to anything I want? So, you know, we need to balance these things.
Thank you very much, ma. Balance is key. So someone has asked a question from Ronke, I think it's Dr. Ronke here. How do you deal with mental issues relating to rejection from friends, most especially when they profess their faith in school? A child almost committed suicide.
That is a very deep one. Now, first and foremost, you need to affirm that child. You need to affirm that child. You know, you confess your faith. Some people didn't believe. Show the child that there are many who have confessed their faith and people didn't believe. Beginning from Jesus Christ himself. When he said he was the Son of God, nobody believed. I mean, some people believed him, and some people so disbelieved him. They had to kill him for it. So let your child be affirmed by you, and let the child know that, you know, sometimes it's important to know how to walk alone. You know, sometimes it's important to know how to walk alone. Life is a journey. There are parts of it you walk with others, there are parts of it you walk alone. And let your child know that, so that if a child knows I can walk alone, it's okay if I tell people about my faith and they don't reject, they don't accept it. I don't have to feel bad to the point of wanting to die. If I let the child know they don't accept it, pray for them. They don't accept it, pray for them, but don't hate them. You know, just pray for them and don't feel bad. Sometimes, and you might, that is where sometimes the example I just finished talking about, where your child says, I don't like this dress. You remind the child, remember that dress that I thought was nice and you didn't like? Yeah. So sometimes you think something is nice, other people don't think so. It's all right for people not to like what you want. And remember also that, you know, people come to salvation at their own time. Some of those people who are rejected, they might later come back to you and ask you, wow, I remember that you once told me about Jesus. I need Jesus now. Can you tell me? You have to teach your child the value of patience, that if you sow a seed now, it doesn't necessarily mean to need to germinate. It's not going to germinate immediately, you know. So when we're teaching our children, we have to give them a balanced view. It's not always just 1 + 1 is 2 like that. Once you preach to somebody, they have to accept and they have to follow your way. No, and it's not just about evangelism. It could be about anything at all. It could be about, and I'll give an example. A child comes, is doing very well in school. This is a real life example. Doing very well in school, and then her friends begin to walk away from her because they think, well, you know, she's just getting all the praise and everything, and we don't want her. She's too bookish, this and that. And then she began to slack in her studies. Said, maybe I should just get a B and be like everybody else, you know, because it doesn't look good when I'm just the only one getting an A+. You have to let that person know that, you know, life is not like that. That they need to know that they just have to be the best of whatever they are doing. be the best that is the best according to their ability. Somebody is getting a B, that may be the best of their ability. Somebody might even be getting a C and is the best of their ability. We have different intellectual capabilities. This is your strong point. There may be somewhere in life where they may have they might be better sports people. For example, they might be better in something or the other than yourself. It might be cooking. Why don't you try and find out what your other friends do well? So you're not always only talking to them about books and books and books alone. Change the subject. Talk to them about cooking, about other things that they might do very well, sports or whatever, art, anything they like that they do very well. Talk about that. Don't talk to them necessarily about maths, where they'll think they're just saying that because they are the one always getting the A. Teach your children humility from the beginning, but let them not feel ashamed of their own success. So
abilities. Thank you so much, Ma. There's somebody that has put a question. It might be our last question because we are rounding up now. How do you reach out to a child that you have no relationship with? Child is now 21. It has something to do with what you said before. Father has tried to have the relationship over the years. Court gave order to mom to allow visitation, but she didn't obey. Every time the father tried to contact child on social media, she blocks him. The father paid child support throughout, but was never given access to the child. The sad thing, similar situation happened to the child's mother, and she is now allowing history repeat itself. Father wants to give up as all his attempts seems to fail. He feels he has tried his best and that it is now up to the child. What do you say?
I say that, first of all, father should not give up in his heart. He might, for a while, slow down on the active trying, try another tactic. Sometimes, in fact, attempts makes the heart grow fonder. So this child has been trying to have a relationship and the child is not responding. First of all, have you tried to find out what is the reason? Was it because the child was told bad things about you? Is it because now, okay, the child feels there's no place for me. This man is married to someone else who will never be my mother, and I don't want to come under the atmospherics of himself and this stepmother. There are so many possible things. But this person is 21, is no longer a child, is an adult. I would advise this kind of father to have an honest discussion with the child. I want to tell you something. Just give me a few minutes of your time and I might never bother you with this again. Those words sometimes can be ominous. When you say, I might never bother you with this again. Okay. So I want to let you know that I'm not proud of the fact that your mom and I didn't make it together. But we had this divorce. The court actually said I could have access, but your mother denied, especially if you have some proof. I have proof that I did pay child support. That was the best I could do because even though I wasn't there to meet your emotional needs, I tried to meet your physical needs. I'm so glad to see the adult that you've turned out to be. I wish I had had input, but now you are a man, you're a woman of yourself. I just want us to be friends. I just want you to know, even if we can't be friends, I want you to know that I'm your dad, I'm there for you. If you don't want a relationship with me anymore, I will stay off. But know that I'll always be there for you. If you call me tomorrow, if you call me tonight or in 10 years' time, I'm your loving dad, I'll always be there for you. But if you don't want me, I can take it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
State your position. State your position and live with it. Live with it because you see, the fact is, like we said from the beginning, you might as well round up on that. Your children have their lives, you have yours. You have the right, you're entitled to your own happiness. If a child wants to punish you because you don't know what the mother is saying, and the child might feel, yeah, this is good punishment for being absent, so let me punish you by never relating to you. it's all right. That child is an adult. The child may come back to you, may not. Just have a good heart and never ever stop praying to the child. The Bible says, oh man, no man, nothing but love. It's exactly the same thing to our children. I want to close on that note. There's one thing we owe our children, love. And one of the best ways to show love is to keep the person in your prayer. Keep the person, always be there to support the person. Think the best, hope for the best, expect the best. That is what love is all about. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anisha. You've done an amazing job. It's been really, really, I would about to say extensive and in-depth, but it's been great. It's been great listening to all your insights about this. Thank you so much.